Welcome. My name is Alexander, and this is Syberia, the World Before. Finally. When we last saw Kate Walker, ex-lawyer adventuress, she'd been captured by a sinister colonel and his doctor ally, leaving Syberia 3 on a massive cliffhanger. In Syberia, the World Before, Kate has been imprisoned in an old salt mine for a year by a fascist militia led by the colonel from Syberia 3, forced to dig through permafrost for mammoth ivory. For the effort they were making in Syberia 3 to stop Kate and the Yukols, all they wanted was slave labor? Kate's sole comfort is her cellmate Katyusha, a rebellious punk musician, with whom she's developed a romantic bond.
Glad you're here. Let's stay close, Katusha, okay?
Kate is smuggled a letter from her former best friend Olivia notifying her that Kate's mother has died. Enclosed is a novelty music box that her mother treasured and a plane ticket to New York. Kate is grief-stricken, but held back by her captivity and being wanted by the law in the USA. While taking all this out on a wall, Kate and Katyusha stumble upon a stash of looted art from the Second World War, including a painting of a woman who Katyusha notes looks strikingly like Kate herself. Actually, we've already met her, because the game really starts with a flashback to 1937 in the city of Vagen, capital of the microstate of Ostertal. Dana Rose is a star pupil of the city's Academy of Music and earns the honor of playing in public with an automaton accompaniment. She's also living with the anxiety of the rise of a fascist party in her homeland that persecutes the country's Vagaran ethnic minority like herself. Before Kate and Katyusha can escape, Katyusha is killed by one of the guards, and with her dying breath encourages Kate to go and find out who her lookalike is. Alright, stop everything. Are we really doing this? The dead lesbian girlfriend trope? Again? This video was a lot longer in the making than I planned, because I was so furious that the game had pulled this stunt that I turned it off. It took weeks before I could make myself start it up again. If you don't know the history of the bury your gays trope, I've linked a comprehensive article in the description. I hate it when romantic partners are killed off to motivate the hero. I don't think I've ever found it anything other than sexist, lazy, and callous. Given how hard the fight for LGBT representation has been, it's especially cruel, backward, and in this case pointless. Losing her mother was a completely sufficient motivation for Kate's new quest. In the run-up to Syberia 3, Syberia's creator Benoit Sokal hinted at Kate's journey, including reevaluating her sexuality. Some of the best coverage on the Syberia games I ever found was by queer writers who really connected to Kate back in Syberia 1 and 2. And not only did that not show up in Syberia 3, but I feel like I just watched the developers spit in those fans' faces. There's even a game mechanic that would have allowed Katyusha to participate. At various points, the perspective switches from Kate to other characters, mainly Dana. It's mostly an expansion on reading books, diaries, and other documents in previous Syberia games. You switch to Dana's perspective in the past for a while and just live it instead. A similar role in the present day is already taken by Oscar after Kate installs his heart in an automaton hedgehog. Still, literally anything would have been better than another dead queer character. The controls are quite an improvement over Syberia 3. WASD navigation is out, classic point and click is in. The camera positioning is better than ever. It follows Kate much more smoothly than in Syberia 3 with more reliable pathfinding while not leaving her miles away like in Syberia 1. You use a drag to select wheel sort of system for both using objects and dialogue, and the inventory system is way less arduous. As in Syberia 3, a lot of interactions need you to mimic the physical motion with your mouse or controller. It's a little fiddly, but I kinda like it. Although rapid clicking to pull open a door seemed a little silly. Maybe I'm just embarrassed because I didn't understand what it was asking and kept dropping Kate on her butt. Exploring Vagen, Kate uses records, monuments, and reminiscences to track down Dana's home, family business, the music academy, and the mountain hostelry where Dana used to work summers. While Dana was working at the hostel, she fell in love with Leon, a mountaineer on an expedition financed by the fascist party to the fictional Himalayan country of Baltayar, in search of a lost tribe of proto-human, the Goran. Leon becomes a fugitive from the fascists, and Dana has to go into hiding, first to maintain her respectability after learning she's pregnant by Leon, then from the fascist takeover of Ostertal, escaping with the British Secret Service to return later on a covert mission to okay, whoa. The longer I played, the more I kept thinking I was switching between 2 or 3 completely different games, none of which were getting enough time for their stories to breathe properly. I said of Syberia 3 that the amount of ground Kate covers in her adventure was disappointingly small. This game occurs almost entirely in the city of Vaughan, bar a few brief flashback levels in New York, London, and Baltiar. Vaughan is wonderfully detailed in its history and geography. It's basically set in an alternate universe Liechtenstein.
That's Germany over there. I wonder how far Baruchstadt University is from here.
The environments are even better than Syberia 3, set among historic architecture in a bright, crisp autumn. Mostly. And the charming anachronistic jumble is back. This computer looks like something out of a Myst game. I remember staying in hostels in the mid-2000s that had landline phone booths, but they weren't this nice, nor holding old-fashioned brass bell setups. The character design is much less cartoony, while the face and gesture animation is just as good as the last game, and the voice actors are doing a much better job.
It's likely to send shockwaves all through the world of anthropology.
Besides, it's always nicer to be stranded in good company.
I have a few questions about Vaughan.
Good, because if you'd asked me about the latest scientific discovery, I'd have to say pass.
During the pre-release promos for the world before, I saw a lot of whining online saying that Kate looked and sounded unrecognizable. Sharon Mann remains her voice actor, but she is a bit hard to recognize at first. Funnily enough, her voice kept reminding me of Claudia Black's character in Mass Effect.
This bar. I know, not what you'd expect. But nobody on Thessia wanted to listen to my wise counsel, so here I am.
Today's the day we're supposed to take over from Team Orange in Gallery C, right?
It made sense to me. She's been down a frozen salt mine for a year. I'd be raspy too. I assumed Kate's hair was forcibly shaved during her captivity, but once she's in Vaughan, she's recognizably Kate Walker again. Benoit Sokal's erratic track record on names persists. Ostertal and Baltiar are winners, but the Vaughan Fascist Party is called the Brown Shadow. Sounds like a euphemism for flatulence. I assumed it meant to evoke the Nazi-adjacent parties around Europe then, like the Hungarian Arrow Cross Party, the Flemish National League in Belgium, or Romania's Iron Guard Green Shirts. But the Brown Shadow name and emblem are used throughout the game. Probably the developers just didn't want to use Nazi swastikas. Can't blame them, really. It is weird that they also invented an ethnic minority, the Vagarans. I'd as soon just made Dana Jewish. Kate's mom passed away in Mount Sinai Hospital, which I took as an implication that Kate is Jewish, so I don't know why they'd obscure the connection. The puzzles have finally kicked that Syberia habit of unexpectedly getting more complicated. Finding keys and key objects and configuring machinery are exactly the kind of puzzles I enjoy. I also love this one where you have to use archival material to trace the source of the painting of Dana. It reminds me of my historical archaeology class in university. Occasionally we can switch at will between Kate in the 2000s and Dana in the 1930s, seeing things through her eyes and recreating them in the present day. Oscar can come out to get into places Kate can't reach, although they're just linear button-pushing exercises. It's otherwise similar to the multi-perspective puzzles in the Secret Files games. A mechanic which would, I repeat, have been a great excuse to keep Katusha alive. Some of the puzzles don't serve any apparent purpose, though. For example, during one of the flashbacks, Dana has two tasks in the hostelry. Fill some drink orders for the Mountaineers and fix the hostelry furnace. The drinks one sort of makes sense. You need to get them their orders to be able to engage them in conversation and learn what's going on. In any other adventure game, you'd fix the furnace to thaw something out or in exchange for the owner's help, but it doesn't actually do anything. Just stop your progress until you do it. While Dana is working for British intelligence, she has to arrange this plotting board correctly to reflect enemy deployments. This hit my military history nerd centers dead on, but it doesn't make a lick of difference to the story of the game.
The most widely used Allied single-seat fighter plane. I probably owe it my life, like all of us here.
Heck yeah. I did get a kick out of the report from a BJB, a reference to BJ Blazkowicz of the Wolfenstein games. That's about as far from a Syberia game as you can get. The music is charming enough. The emphasis on piano puts me in mind of Beethoven. Never a bad thing. The Syberia 3 theme and the Hymn of Vaughan are reliably great, but I found it faded into the background and it wasn't as affecting as the soaring vocal pieces in Syberia 3. The music kind of underscores what disappoints me about The World Before, really. It's beautiful, but the instrumentation is blandly European. The use of non-European instruments and vocals in Syberia 2 and 3 reinforce the theme of traveling to new places and cultures and broadening horizons. I still miss that, and the glimpse of Baltiar is more frustrating than tantalizing. It's like the way Kate reached Yakistan in Syberia 3 only for the game to screech to a halt. Granted, I'm not sure how well they would have handled it, given my complaints about the stereotypes in the Yukol tribe, but it could have been fun in a hopefully more politically correct Tintin way. Going from a sequence of small, tantalizing game environments to one highly detailed environment isn't inherently a bad idea. That's what Riven is to Myst, and that's one of my favorite stories of all time. But it still feels like the Syberia team wasted a lot of perfectly good material that should have bridged the old games and the new. This crystallized for me when Kate reflected on how she got to Vaughan from the salt mine.
How strange to be here in Vaughan. After months of roaming from east to west on a motorbike, after taking odd jobs here and there to build up a little nest egg to finance this trip.
So let me get this straight. Kate has been traveling from place to place, doing jobs to let her move on in pursuit of a mysterious person. In other words, what happened after the prologue and what we skipped over was a Syberia game. It's like the space between Syberia 2 and 3. There's this gap in the narrative that they could have fit a game in, and they just didn't. We don't even see the defeat of the Colonel. We just read about how Kate got to Vaughan and called the cops. It irritates me that Kate was imprisoned for that long at all. Every time she's gotten captured before, she gets right on escaping. I would rather Kate have puzzled her way out, maybe get another puzzle out of rescuing her still alive girlfriend. The story the game does have is so dense it gets in its own way. Kate tracking Dana was a fine plot. Dana's career would make a great game. So would the quest to Baltiar to find the Gorin. And fitting, given Siberia's roots. Trying to do them all at once is too much. Not only would the journey to Baltiar make a great game on its own, but I wanted to visit it as Kate Walker. I mean, she's the main character whose determined investigations, sense of wonder, and character development made Syberia stand out. This little shrine with the prayer flags reminded me of exploring the Shangri-La monastery during my Let's Play of the Journeyman Project 3. I'd love it if Kate explored a Buddhist monastery, but instead she's sidelined reading about other people doing things. I did like that Kate got some moments of rest and reflection, though. This scene with Kate in her pajamas made her seem more real somehow. Some of the action prompt gameplay put me in mind of Quantic Dream games, but Benoit Sokal never succumbed to the cheap fan service I associate with those. There was real potential in Kate looking inward. Exploring the emotional fallout of leaving her life behind was one of the most interesting threads from Syberia 3, but The World Before cannot get its story straight. It doesn't make sense to me that Kate would be wanted for anything she did. A lawsuit from her old firm, maybe, or a misguided attempt by her family to rescue her from herself, but this is just drama for drama's sake. Like needlessly killing off Kate's girlfriend. I'm not letting this go. Olivia reaches out to Kate and vice versa a couple of times, and it always takes the form of Olivia accusing Kate of abandoning everyone in her life.
You had plenty of time to think about how you abandoned all of us. Me, your mother, Dan, or even that poor Mr. Kenton. And maybe felt at least some remorse?
But that's literally not what happened. Kate didn't abandon Olivia. Olivia cheated on her with Kate's fiancé, Dan.
It's all my fault. I could never tell you that I've had the hots for Dan for ages.
Who was, to repeat my comment about Syberia 1, a pile of red flags for emotional abuse.
To hell with your mission. I don't know why you accepted it in the first place. If you just stuck to the middle of the road, then we wouldn't be in this mess.
I also cannot get over how Olivia accuses Kate of abandoning Canton, the detective who tried to abduct her in Syberia 3. Twice. Kate has dialogue choices, so I haven't seen every way this could play out, but having played the first two games, Olivia comes across as relentlessly gaslighting Kate. Olivia arguably has a point regarding Kate's mom, but even in Syberia 1, I got the sense that Kate's relationship with her mother wasn't all that healthy. I mean, her mom said she was worried to Valium in Syberia 2. In the flashback to Kate's childhood, it's hinted that Mrs. Walker had a substance abuse problem.
Looks like Mom's friends came over again last night. Mom bought those again.
And tried to mold Kate to her own wishes.
The piano that Mom ordered will soon be here. couldn't bring myself to tell her that I wanted a drum kit instead.
It's also implied this is because something tragic happened to Kate's dad, but the way she talked about Kate's dad in Syberia 1...
Oh, I've got such happy memories of Europe. Some of them even involve your father, but that's enough of that.
suggested that they parted on bad terms, not that he died. I feel like Kate shouldn't be struggling with guilt. She should be processing that she ran away because she was in a toxic web of relationships in her old life. You know, I said in my Syberia 3 video that I was hoping that The World Before would pick up the loose threads of that game, but Syberia The World Before isn't a sequel, it's a do-over. The graphics and interface of World Before achieve what Syberia 3 was trying to do, and gets the voice acting back up to snuff, but the puzzles are an afterthought. The dialogue choices and side objectives dilute a story that is both overstuffed and wasteful of its source material, and hinging a lot on twists and happenstance. Knowing that Syberia creator Benoit Sokal passed away during production, I'm reminded of one of Sir Terry Pratchett's last books, Raising Steam, where the stories of two books were seemingly bashed together to keep ahead of his failing health. I mean, it was still a fine book. Sir Terry was just that good. This game has an open, the adventure continues ending that evokes Syberia 1, but the last link connecting Kate with Dana is found not through Kate's investigation skills, but from a last-minute twist. The game has lots of callbacks, but it doesn't know what to do with its legacy. In fact, it can't even seem to remember parts of it correctly. And it has lots of interesting new ideas, but it doesn't properly contextualize those ideas. The opportunity to deepen Kate Walker's character is squandered on cheap, toxic tropes and cramming in new characters who genuinely deserve games of their own. Microids is a studio I'm still going to keep my eye on, but I have a horrible feeling I'm going to end up writing more Syberia fanfiction to work out my frustrations with this game. It's a unique series, and no part of it is irredeemable. But The World Before's shortcomings are even more frustrating than Syberia 3's because they seem so obviously avoidable. It has a lot to offer, but I can't help but see it as semi-canon at best. Like a dream I can only remember parts of. Which is, I suppose, sort of fitting for a Syberia game. I still hope we'll see Kate Walker in another game, but she'll never stop adventuring in my mind. Goodbye, Kate Walker, and for the rest of you, thank you for watching.